On today's episode, we're exploring the topic of leadership and courage. And I'm very excited to welcome Cate Prescott. She is a current CPO and EVP to the podcast. Cate has over 25 years of experience leading HR organizations. And in her most recent role, she stepped into a brand new CPO role to not only transform the function, but to help transform the global business. Cate is also a wife, mother, and amazing friend. Cate, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Lindsay. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you for being here. I was thinking through, and I think as we were chatting in a prior conversation, that you and I have now known each other about 10 years, which is
That's crazy.
unbelievable to me how time
Yeah.
flies.
Same, same. It
Yes.
seems like 5 minutes. It's ridiculous.
Well, we recently had a chance to catch up and talk about the impact that you've had as a leader on those around you. And I'm not even sure really that I can put into words how you've impacted me and the investment that you've made into my life, my career, and really been an encourager, which I think is such an appropriate word for you. And you just have this ability to see things in people and bring the best out of others that is really a unique character trait that you have and something that I admire in you.
Thank
And
you.
so I'd love to spend some time today talking about how you lead and the capacity with which you have to help lead and motivate others, which, like I said, I think you have an ability to do so in a very unique way that I think a lot of people can learn from that are listening today.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you. I
Yes.
appreciate
Well, I mean every word. So, to get us started, I was thinking about just the way that you have this genuine interest in other people. You really lead from a place of compassion. But I'm curious how you differentiate between telling someone they're capable and creating the conditions for them to really believe it and see it in themselves.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think, first of all, for someone to be able to listen to you and hear you, and I mean properly hear you, you have to have a strong relationship with them. And the relationship never gets built unless you can build really strong trust. So, in order to be able to build trust, you therefore have to lay down the opportunity for psychological safety to form. And that means, I think, being pretty human yourself, having a level of humility that enables people to see you as a person rather than a boss or rather than as a colleague. And if you can create that environment where people feel safe to be able to explore things with you and have real conversations. I feel like these days we have so many superficial conversations and they're all based on task and activity and output and outcomes. And all of those things are important. But we forget the people that are doing all of those things. And I think if you can't relate to the individual in a way where they feel like you have their interests at heart and you're trying to support them, then you just don't get any of those things that are supposed to be, kind of outcome driven, like the task activity stuff that we just said.
Yeah. 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 I always, when I talk to leaders, I mean, building that trust foundation is primary because everything comes from that. And if you haven't taken the time to build trust with people, it doesn't matter really what you say to them, right? It doesn't land well.
No.
Kind of pivoting on that, I think one of the things that I have found really remarkable about the way you lead is you have such a way of giving direct feedback to people like, hey, this is where I think you're doing well, or this is
Yeah.
where maybe you could improve. But it lands with such care. And it never, at least in my experience, it doesn't ever come through as negative or that you're being judgmental or that there's like a fear behind the feedback
Yeah.
that you give, right? It always comes
Yeah.
from the spirit of encouragement and helping you see what you need to see. I'm curious how you balance that. I know you talked about building trust and relationship, but how do you balance being direct? Because I do think you are a very direct person, but you couch it in such a way that is so easy to receive for people. Is that a skill that you've learned over time? Is it something that just comes naturally to you?
I would say definitely it's a skill that I have learned. And if I think about, how I talk to leaders when they're looking to give feedback, I love the kind of Brené Brown, clear is kind. And
Hmm.
I actually feel that if you're not giving somebody feedback that enables them to get better and improve and be the best version of themselves that they could possibly be, then you're doing them a disservice. And
Hmm.
so it's a kindness to be able to say, hey, I thought you did really well here. There's some additional things that if you do even better, or if you lean into a little bit more, that'll go even better for you. That to me is, I always see feedback, and I know it's a bit of an old analogy, but I always see it as a gift.
Hmm.
And if you deliver it in the right way and it's seen with a positive intent, if you're intentional in ensuring that the individual feels like this is about them, it's about their development, it's about their growth, it's about how they can be a better person, then I think that it lands well with everybody. No one comes to work and says, I want to do a crappy job. No one comes to
Right.
work and says, I don't want to be good at what I do, but we don't always have all of the skills straight away to be that best version of ourselves. And we need people along the way to kind of help us, hold our hands, show us what good looks like, and then give us feedback on that. And so that's all
Hmm.
I was doing, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think as women, it's hard sometimes to know how to toe the line between being caring of folks and then also being able to give that direct feedback.
Yeah.
Um, do you think as women that that's something that doesn't come natural to us? Do you think that's something that we have to really work on in terms of being direct, but in a way, like you said, that lands with like kindness and I'm doing this for the best interest of you as a person?
Yeah, I definitely do. I feel like women naturally are people pleasers. And so, if you want to please people, giving them feedback that perhaps it's harder for them to hear isn't
Hmm.
always something that feels good. But I just have to I personally think about how I learned this skill. I kept having to reframe it for myself to say that what I'm doing here is in service of the individual. And
Hmm.
I'm not serving them well if I don't give them this feedback. And if I kept reframing it in that way for myself, then it was much easier for me to give that kind of direct feedback. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't think naturally women lean into wanting to give direct and potentially confrontational feedback, depending on how it's received by the individual, which is why for me, I always start with that psychological safety and trust in a relationship. And then it's much easier to give that feedback and be in service of the person.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I want to pivot a little bit and talk about a role that you had as CPO in a prior organization. You had stepped into this role, I think, really as the very first true kind of elevated CPO role within the organization.
Yeah.
And, looking back, I think from my perspective, what a big job you had. You had not only this very first time transformational role of the HR function, but you were also working to really transform the business as a whole
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah.
And I know that you you moved countries in order to take this opportunity. Tell me a little bit about the courage it took, or maybe it didn't. I don't know to take that leap of faith to move your family you know, across the world to this new opportunity. Because I think a lot of times, we may feel like we don't have everything it takes to step into these big roles or these big opportunities especially as women. There's proof that we tend to want to check every single box right before we
Yeah,
apply to
for
something
sure.
or put our foot our put our hat in the ring, so to speak. So I'm
Yeah.
just curious how you mustered up that courage and what that belief in yourself looked like for you to take the leap of faith there.
Yeah, if I'm being really honest, I would say that it was one of the hardest things I ever did. The decision itself was tough. We had a great infrastructure and lots of friends that we loved in the UK. And I had a 9-year old and a 7-year old at the time who definitely didn't want mum to move them to a different country.
Mhm.
But I had an incredibly, and still do, supportive husband, Tony, who just, was kind of it more of the, you've got this, go for it. And I have to say, if I knew how tough the job was before I started, I don't think I'd have taken it. But I was in that kind of, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
I was honestly, I was flattered to be offered, quite frankly. And I thought, well, maybe I can do this. Maybe this is something I can do. I think the art of starting something before you're ready is always going to take you further than, waiting around to be ready. And I don't think we're ever ready for anything. So I think it was just kind of gird your loins, girl. Let's go do this, right? And let's see where we get to. I think the other thing that I would say that I use a lot is what's the worst that can happen? The worst that could happen was we got out there, we had a couple of years in a different country. The kids got to experience a different culture. I had to go at a job. If I didn't like it or if I failed at it, then the worst that would happen was I'd end up back in the country of my birth, and that would be fine.
Hmm.
There's a saying, and I love this saying because I think if we lean into how this sounds for people, people would probably make different decisions. And it's a bird sitting on a tree is never afraid of the branch breaking because her trust is not on the branch, but on her own wings.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. I've
It
never
really
heard
is.
that.
No, it's something that, I heard years and years ago, and it helped me to think about, whatever I was building, whatever happened, wherever I was, if I believed in myself enough, it was okay. Whatever the
Mhm.
outcome, it was going to be okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the philosophy, if you like, and what I took into um, this new role that made me kind of leave the UK and move over to the US.
Yeah. Well, and I want to get back to some of the challenges with the role and think, just talking about your leadership style, but
Mhm.
you had also an adjustment period. You have children, so moving them and adjusting them to this new way of life and thinking about, how your kids see this courageousness in you or this ability in you to believe in yourself. How have you transcended that or translated that into how they see themselves,
Mhm.
either through their own eyes or through your eyes? Because I think oftentimes I feel like, gosh, I hope my kids are watching these things that I'm doing
Yeah,
and learning from them. Or I want to be able to take a chance and have them watch me so that they know it's okay. Even if I fail, it's okay to still take the chance and like, I'm going to be okay, right? I'm going to land on
that's
my feet.
right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they definitely see themselves as global citizens, which is great. I don't think they would have a fear or a concern of picking up from where they are and moving to a different country. In fact, my daughter is back in the UK. She's gone over there on her own to be in university. And
Hmm.
both of them, are starting to do travel on their own now. So, Ellie, my daughter, worked in Guatemala in an orphanage, and she's going to do the same in Peru this year. And my son's going to Galapagos. He's really interested in
Wow.
experimental science, and he's got a volunteer role to go and do that. So it's super scary letting them go. They're like 18 and 17. And so,
Yeah.
it's like your heart walking outside your body, particularly when you put them on a plane and wave goodbye. It's
Yes.
devastating. But, I think that part of that courage certainly comes from the fact that they had the opportunity as youngsters to kind of to a different country and experience change. And they saw that they survived that, whether they enjoyed it or not. One did, one didn't so much, right? Certainly sees himself now as a US citizen, the other one not so much. But it was something that they both grew from and learned. And they saw a complete role reversal of Tony and I. So when we came over to the US, we were on a visa, a working visa for me, and so Tony
Mhm.
couldn't work. And so it was a complete role reversal, and he was the stay-at-home dad. He was the one that was having, the kids, new kids and friends over as playmates and play dates and making all of that. He was the one that was turning up at the school. He was the one that was doing all of the things. And quite honestly, I'm not sure I could have done what I did in terms of having to kind of throw myself into this new role. As you know well, it was a founder transition, and those things aren't for the faint-hearted.
Mhm.
And to your point earlier, it was not only kind of transforming the HR organization, it was transforming the HR organization whilst transforming the business.
Mhm.
And so that really required me to, kind of live and breathe it, certainly for the first couple of years, quite frankly. And, if I didn't have Tony doing what he was doing, I just genuinely don't think I would have been able to do what I was able to do in the time frame that I was able to do it. So
Yeah.
again, having a great partner is definitely a support system that I absolutely benefited from in terms of how I've navigated my career.
Yeah. I wonder, as women think about whether they wanna grow in their career or maybe just grow in other ways, they're stepping out of comfort zones.
Yeah,
I think what you just described has is probably on a lot of minds of women in terms of capacity,
yeah,
right? If especially if
absolutely.
they have children or they're caring for parents maybe that are, in ill health or other family members, maybe they're caregivers, but the capacity of I wanna grow or I want more for myself, but I also have this other thing that I need to balance. Do you
Yeah.
think it's realistic to take on a role like you took on and still taking the bulk of the parenting duties? Like, for example, if Tony had been able to work, do you
Yeah.
think you would have been able to manage all the things you were able to manage successfully?
It's hard to say. I know he was a super positive part of my kind of journey here and
Mhm,
the things that I was able to do. I think I would have had to go at a slower pace, quite honestly, to be
mhm.
able to achieve the things that I needed and wanted to achieve whilst balancing the whole of the kind of childcare. I think there's seasons, again, if you've got a good partner, and not everybody has, but if you have a good partner, I was there for him and I had the children, I had time off, and, he was in his kind of height of his career and his career trajectory. And so I slowed down from a working point of view. We
Mhm.
didn't charge at the same time.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he said to me when we got this opportunity to come over to the US was, it's your time now. I've had my time. You've done the support team for me. Now let me be the support team for you. So I really think it's tough when you're on your own or when you have a partner that, is ambitious and wants to kind of do his career. It's really tough to be able to balance all of those things for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think the there's a phrase of, you can have it all, but just not at all at the same time, and
That's
as
right.
I get older, that resonates with me more and more because it is about the trade-offs and choices and sort of where am I gonna put my energy at this point in time, what's most important to me, and so I think everyone has to make those decisions for themselves, and depending on your circumstances, like,
Yeah,
the circumstances are what they are, so you've gotta figure out
exactly.
how to manage through them, right?
Yeah, I think there's seasons for everyone, right? If I think about my season now, my kids are very self-sufficient. They can
Mhm.
kind of look after themselves. So, there's opportunity that brings for what I want to do and who I want to become as I continue
Yeah.
to evolve and grow. That definitely wasn't the case when they were young.
Yes.
And you know what that's like. You're a mum, right? It's you
Yes.
balance their needs, and you're trying always to be the best in all areas of your life. And I think sometimes you have to compromise on some things that,
Mhm.
actually I can't be 100% here. I can be 75%. And that's
Yeah.
probably good enough. But some things that require 100%, you have to prioritize. And for me, the
Yeah.
kids definitely were that. If Tony had have not been able to do what he did, I think it would have been a different story.
Yeah. Well, I remember when my kids were real little, I mean, you and I were working
Yeah,
together at the
that's
time,
right.
and my husband was in a job where I mean, he would
He was
call me at
young.
10 o'clock in the morning and say, I'm getting on a plane in an hour and I'm going to be gone for 3 days. And I'm like, what? And it
Yeah,
turned my week and my day and my world upside down every time I got this urgent call that he was traveling. And I never knew when he was coming and going. And, at the time I was in more of a global role. So I was kind of
yeah,
on at
that's
all
right.
hours of the night and I
Yeah,
had little kids and that was tough. That was a tough season, especially when they're small and they really need you. And, you
yeah.
can't just leave them in a room by
No,
themselves. You've got to actually be there and help them and feed them and
exactly.
bathe them and all the things. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I think it, you're right. It is seasons. And I'm in that phase too. My kids are older and it's allowing me to do different things with my
yeah.
time, which is great. Have you taken anything up new or new hobbies since your kids have been more grown up and you've had a little bit more capacity or?
I think we go away a lot more, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't have to worry that the kids are at home, so that's definitely something that we're doing more of. I'm definitely doing more exercise and yoga, so it's a bit more of the self-care that I've put
Yes.
on hold. If you think of a pie and you split it into pieces, that part of my pie was left for a long time. It got slightly stale, I
Yes.
think, if it was a pie. So I'm definitely doing more to for myself now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know
And
you're a pretty adventurous person, right? So are you still adventurous? Or is it more tame stuff now? Like you said, yoga, other things?
well, yeah, if I get the opportunity to be adventurous, I'm absolutely adventurous. Yeah, yeah. So I'll still kind of skydive off of out of planes and abseil
Yeah.
down buildings if I get the opportunity to, for sure. Yeah, life is too short not to, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. I will allow you to go do those things. Imma stand on the ground and I'll watch you and wave at you, but I'm not jumping out of any planes, that's for sure.
Everyone needs a support crew, everybody. So
Yes. Yes.
keep in
Well, I want
mind.
to pivot a little bit back to, we were talking about your last role,
Yes.
and kind of changing the culture. And I think it just, from my perspective, is a tough environment, an
Yeah.
organization that had a lot of long history and ways of working and doing things. And I think there were a lot of, I would imagine, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine a lot of difficult conversations that came with that role. And I'm really curious, how you were able to uh, I don't want to I don't want to make this a gender thing, but I think there was a lot of very male dominant leaders in that
Yeah, for sure.
organization, right? And so
Yeah.
as a female coming in um to a traditionally what I would consider a transactional HR organization and really trying to not only position your team and your organization as a strategic partner, but
Yeah.
also just earning that credibility with the leaders that already were in the
Yeah.
organization. How did you decide how you were going to show up? How did you hold your own? Because again, I just think
Yeah.
about as women, we get these mixed messages, sometimes where it's like, well, be strong, but not too strong, or be feminine, but not too feminine, and be loud, but don't be loud. Like you just get all these mixed messages about how you're supposed to show up. And again, from my vantage point, I just always saw you stand up with grace. Like you held your own, but you did it in such a way that it didn't seem confrontational. It didn't
Yeah.
seem like an affront to people. I wasn't in every room, so I don't know if things ever got in a different direction. But I'm just
Time.
curious how you honed that skill, or if you could share with people listening, women listening, like
Yeah.
how do you show up in those kinds of rooms and just go toe to toe with people?
Yeah. That's a really interesting one. I think I use humor a lot, and I smile a lot. So, I have been called a couple of times the smiling assassin, um, but I'm kind of delivering something because I think if you try and do it with humor and with a smile, it takes people off guard. but then you deliver the message and then you smile again and walk away. And then they're left smiling at you thinking, hang on a minute, she's just said whatever I just said, right? So there's a
Yes.
little bit of that that I do. An example, actually today, an example, where we were waiting for some feedback from the executive leadership team, myself and my talent leader. And they'd said in the meeting, oh, this is a 15-minute job. And so, I'd said, okay, great. If it's a 15-minute job, let's get it done. And
Yeah.
so I'd send something for them to fill in, and the deadline had passed. So my email was, hey, this 15-minute job is taking a lot longer than 15 minutes. You've missed the deadline. Craig, you get my gold star because you got the feedback first and within the 15 minutes, congratulations. And so I said, please get this done as soon as possible. So and I sent it to my talent leader just to let her know that I was chasing it. And she came back and she said, that's firm but funny. And
Yes.
that's probably a good description of me. I can be firm, but I try and do it in a way that's pleasant, that's disarming, that doesn't lead to people turning off from
Yeah.
hearing what I have to say. So yeah, so definitely that. But I will tell you, Lindsay, honestly, I mean, there were times when I did not have composure and was not full of grace when I was giving feedback.
I'm
Um,
sure.
I don't even know whether I can say this, so you might have to cut it out. But there was right, in one organization that I worked with where all the men in the table, they were just going at it, hammer and tongs with each other, and we were getting absolutely nowhere. So I literally stood up, banged the table, and said, "Can you lot stop willy waving?" Um, and, and it was just such a shock
Yeah.
moments for people and a shock thing for me to say. They all got very embarrassed and quiet. And then I was able to kind of take the conversation forward to say, okay, so what I've heard is, and this is what we need to do, and
Yeah.
it just kind of helped change the dynamic in the room a little bit. So I'm not advocating for necessarily saying that, but a way of kind of changing the dynamic in the room sometimes is a
Yeah.
good way of doing it. I think the other thing that I did pretty early on, you'll know from me, I'm incredibly passionate about my team.
Mhm.
And there was something that we were doing for the then CEO. Um, and it took a lot of time and energy. And his previous perspective on this thing was that it was perfect and we didn't need to kind of do it again. It was actually around benchmarking.
Mhm.
A predecessor of mine had done a benchmarking and showed the CEO that we were, market median, and it was all great and everything was fine. Yet everyone was happy, people were leaving, so we were trying to figure out what the problem was. So when
Yeah.
myself and my talent and my total reward leader looked at the data, they weren't comparing it to the right jobs. They were, it was a bad job that had been done. So one of our analysts did a ton of analytics on this, got best practice, went out and got data from all different markets, came back, and basically we presented to the CEO that we had a hole in our budget because we weren't at market median. We were at 20th percentile on a lot of the roles that were critical roles for us to use to move the organization forward.
Mhm.
And he just sat there and said, okay, so I think finance probably needs to check that information because, it's obviously kind of financial data and financial information. And I could see my teammate on the call going bright red. She happens to have a finance degree,
Uh-huh.
and she absolutely is spot on when it comes to doing this work activity.
Yeah.
So I stopped the meeting and I said, "Can I have a word with you, please?" And this is the CEO, and I'm like, I've been there, I don't know, 18 months, but I was so mad, so mad. I took him to a room and I said, "You need to pick up the phone now and you need to apologize to that lady. She's done some brilliant work here. You devalued that. You told her her work wasn't good enough. And, she'll probably be looking to resign as a consequence of the feedback you've just given. So get on the phone now and apologize to her." And
Yeah.
he blah, 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 like he was a bit, he was taken back by my feedback. And he wanted to talk to me. I said, "No, don't talk to me until you've talked to her. Give her the feedback first." So anyway, he
Wow.
phoned her, apologized, talked her off the ledge because she was really upset with his feedback, of course,
Yeah.
and then came back to me, and I was still seething, mad as I've ever been. And he came in and he said, "Oh, now can we talk?" I said, "No, not unless you want my resignation. Go away. I will talk to you when I'm ready. I'm not ready now." So
Wow.
yeah, the things that happen behind the scenes that you don't see. So that happened, but it was the right thing to do for me. I needed to show my team that I had their back. And actually it gave the CEO a different flavor of who I was. I'm not just the, smiley Kate. I do
Yeah.
have a backbone and I will do what's right in the time frame. And so he
Yeah.
had gave a lot more respect to me after that time. So that was one of the ways that I guess I kind of pushed my way in and earned some respect from the executive leadership team at the time.
Yeah. Well, and from your own team, I mean, I can't even imagine the respect that you earned from your own team just in standing up for them and, defending them against that. I mean, most of the time, I would say that I don't know that in my whole career I've ever seen something like that in defense of a team, to be
Yeah.
honest. So,
I mean, honestly, I couldn't have lived with myself if I'd have let that go. I just couldn't. And
yeah.
all the things I was trying to teach the team about having a seat about at the table, about being courage over comfort, be strong with your opinions, make sure what you say counts. And they'd done all of those things. They'd done an amazing piece of work. And for him to poo-poo it like that, it was the only thing I could do at the time. And, I
Yeah.
thought afterwards, oh, blimey, I'm going to get sacked here. I'm
Let's
going to be
say
back on,
that was
I'm
bold.
gonna be back in the UK any second now. Sorry, fam. I know you started to enjoy it here, but now we've got to go back. But it just, there was nothing else I could say to be
Yeah.
true to myself at that moment in time, other
Yeah.
than what was said.
Yeah. Well, I think, that speaks to the leader in you that I know and what I've seen of you. I'll tell a quick story just on Kate, and I reminded her of this. I tell the story all the time of what good leadership looks like, and Kate's my example because I had worked for her and then I had left to go to another organization for some personal reasons. And my first day at my new job, I got a bouquet of flowers and I was thinking my husband sent them. And I opened the card and it is from Kate and my former direct boss who said, "You missed Employee Appreciation Week. And so we want to make sure that you feel appreciated and we wish you all the best on your new job." And I reference that action as like class act leadership all of the time because you just don't normally get that. And that also shows in terms of, how people come to an organization is just as important as how they leave your organization.
Sure.
And, the goodwill that you leave people with,
Yeah.
letting people know that you don't, there's no hard feelings or, hey,
No.
people have to do what they have to do. But I think, Kate, those things speak to just what kind of leader you are and how genuine you are and how you care about your people.
Well,
I am curious how that shows up like that. So we did the strength finders and that one
yeah.
thing with the colors. Now I can't even remember the name of it.
Insights. It was
The
insights we used.
insights. Yes.
Yeah.
So I know yours was like the sunshine yellow at the top, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think we can joke about it and be like, haha, I'm fun and I like to smile and I like people. But I think really I look at it as this like optimism that you bring to the table. And
Yeah.
I think you have a very good way of turning things into, okay, yes, this is happening, but let's look on the bright side, right? Let's look at what's the possibility.
Yeah.
And where did that come from? Is that just how you operate as a human being? And so you're just naturally optimistic? Or is that, again, like a skill that you've honed over time?
Honestly, I think it's who I am as an individual. So I have a brother who's disabled. And so I learned early on that, everyone is worthy of investment. And I'm very lucky for who I am, and, how I got birth versus how my brother did. So,
Uh-huh.
I think that definitely frames the level of optimism that I have. I have to tell you, though, I have to be really careful not to overuse that optimism because when we're going through hard things and someone's just saying, "Oh, don't worry, everything's fine," it doesn't land well with people. So,
Yeah.
I have to definitely work hard in making sure that I acknowledge where everybody else is on that journey and how they're feeling about things. And then who needs what? Does someone need care and feed? Does someone need more information? Does someone need some inspiration? Does someone need some optimism, or does someone just need to be listened to, and feel heard?
Yeah.
And so, trying to make sure that I individualize things for people rather than just try and, it one size fits all. I think that's something else that I've learned through my career, that, treating people as individuals, not as an amorphous mass of people, is the best way of really getting something out of an individual, and helping them to achieve what they want to and or go through whatever you're asking them to go through with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely the way that we grew up obviously shapes how we show up
Yeah,
in our lives today and how we think of things.
for sure.
So I think the fact that you took that away is incredible, right? I mean, again, it's that optimism. Like I'm so grateful for what I have and what I've been given
Exactly.
and the abilities that I've been given. I love that.
Gratitude's a wonderful thing, if you can be grateful for the small things. I think the other thing that we always do is, when this has happened, when that has happened,
Mm.
when this has happened, I'll be happy. Um,
Yeah,
there's an opportunity to enjoy the journey that you're on and take the small moments and be grateful for each of those moments as they occur. And so again, that's where my kind of natural optimism comes from. I also know that, growth doesn't happen in comfort.
yes,
You have to push past those limiting beliefs that we all have and just allow yourself to rethink what's possible. And so I'm always thinking through, okay, we are where we are, but what's the art of the possible? How can I reframe this in a way so that, there is an opportunity on the other side of this?
yeah, yeah. I love that. Well, you've definitely helped me do those things and reframe situations along the way. I think part of this is also, finding your tribe and surrounding yourself with people like Kate that can speak life and truth into you and help encourage you when you do feel like there's moments that I don't know if I can do it or am I capable, and you find those people that see that capability within you, and surrounding yourself with those folks. One final question before we conclude, Kate, is really thinking about, women in the workplace. There's not always an opportunity, I think, to reach down. Women
Yeah,
are carrying a lot. They're
yeah,
they're trying to manage careers and home lives and a lot of things. And, I see you as someone who has been an advocate and a sponsor. You've definitely been someone who has taken time, like you said, to listen to the person, understand what their needs are, which takes energy and it takes effort, right? It's not something that you can just willy nilly do. For women that are looking for that in the workplace or perhaps sponsorship, I think sponsorship is a word that we don't use enough.
yeah,
It's different than mentorship, right?
yeah,
Sponsorship is someone who's going to advocate for you in rooms you're not in,
yeah,
someone who knows your capabilities. They're going to be someone who says, "Hey, we thought about Kate for this. Kate's the girl that's going to get the job done," that kind of person. How do you think women can build that relationship in the workplace, and find those women and or men
yeah.
that can be really sponsors for them, and really help them shape and build their careers?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I would say. I don't think any of us are meant to lead alone. I think one of our greatest strengths as women is the power to really create community, and how we show up for each other.
Mhm.
My best boss was a woman. My worst boss was a woman. So I've seen both sides of what women can do to each other in a positive
Yeah.
and a negative way, and I want to be the kind of on the positive side for sure. I think one of the things that women have been doing recently, and is to advocate for themselves first and foremost, but then find that kind of internal board. Who are your board members? Who are the people that are going to give you strong advice, guidance, and to your point, who are the people that are going to stand in the room that you're not in and
Mhm.
mention your name and say your name, and finding those people and really working with those people is important, and just like any board of people, if you kind of choose two or three people that you're going to work with as sponsors for you, they've got to know what you're doing, they've got to know what your latest challenge is, how you're overcoming that. So you need to go to coffee with them, catch them up on your life, catch them up on the things that are important to you, and ask. I think also the other thing I would say is women never ask, right? We
Mhm.
never ask. And the answer's always no if you don't ask.
Right.
So, if you do ask, the answer could be yes. You got a 50-50. If you're not asking the question, then it's 100% no.
Yeah.
So, advocating for yourself in relation to that, as well as having that little internal set of board members who will speak truth to you and for you in the room where you're not, is really important.
I think too, just being that yourself for other people too, right? So, what you want in someone else, be that for another person. I think when we open ourselves up to other people and helping them, it kind of re-energizes us as well. Especially, we've been in your career maybe 20 years,
Yeah.
like you and I have, and sometimes it can feel, am I making a difference? Am I doing anything? And as soon as you kind of open yourself up to helping someone else or being a part of their life, I think it does sort of re-energize you as well a little bit.
Most definitely. I think what you give, you get back in spades. How wonderful is it to see someone who you've advocated for and who you've tried to help achieving what they wanted to achieve? I mean, that's just such a gift to
Mhm.
see and to have back. And it's so powerful. To your point, that you get your energy again and you go again to help somebody else. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a big believer in what you give out, you get back.
Yeah.
What goes around comes around, karma, whatever you want to call it. But if you're trying to do good, then you're much more likely to receive that good back.
Yeah. Agree. Agree. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. I think you've given us so many great nuggets just around like courageousness, being confident in ourselves and our own capabilities. And, I think it's really nice to hear from someone who's been in these rooms where there's been very important conversations that
Yeah,
it's not easy for everybody, including yourself.
right.
I'm sure there's been times you've walked out of rooms and had to kind of pick yourself up a little bit. And,
Yeah.
sometimes all we see is the outside of someone or the outside of what's happening. And it's nice to hear that we all face similar challenges and, have similar thoughts about what we're capable of. And it's really about digging deep and um, finding it inside yourself, finding that strength and that courage within
Yes.
yourself.
Finding that strength in yourself and also finding the advocates in the room. and
Yeah.
work in the room, quite frankly. Don't go into a meeting and give somebody a surprise. Make sure you've had the conversation beforehand. You get a much better response as a consequence, and or get
Yeah.
2 or 3 people who are on your side when you're going in with a new idea, who can sort of stand up and support you. So it is about internal courage. It's also about trusting others,
Mhm.
and making sure that you're a trusted person for those people as well, so that teamwork makes the dream work. You're never alone when you lead. You need other people.
Yeah. I love that. I think leadership can feel very lonely, right? You can feel like you're all in it all by yourself.
Yeah,
So
you
I
kind
love
of
that you
let
say it.
it. But, you I think that's how where you have levels of humility and are humble, and you say, "Hey, I don't know how to, get the result that I'm looking for here. What would you do? How would you tackle this? Who are the people in
Yeah.
the room that are gonna influence this? What do I need to do?" And people are pretty genuine when you ask those questions,
Mhm.
and when you kind of make yourself a little bit vulnerable to others. 9 times out of 10, they don't take that vulnerability in a bad way. They take it in a good way and support you, in your endeavors. So, I've never had, um, a moment of vulnerability be thrown back in my face. I'm sure there have been occasions with a lot of people, but, I've been grateful to have good colleagues and people who, have wanted to see success, because at the end of the day, if we've all got the same objective and outcome, which is we want our business to go faster, we want it to be best, we want it to improve, we want to do great things for our customers, we want our employees to have a fantastic experience at this company, and we want
Mhm.
our employees to turn around at the end of the day and say, hey, that company was the place where I learned the most, grew the most, and had the most experiences. If we want all of those same outcomes, and I can't think of people in the boardroom that wouldn't,
Yeah.
then you just have to keep reminding them of that being the end outcome of the thing that you're bringing up, and usually that helps to smooth things along.
Yeah. I love it. Any final thoughts for women that might be listening that are thinking like, I want more. What if I can't? What if they're the doubter? What if they're the person that thinks, am I capable? What if I can't do this thing I'm trying to do? Any final thoughts for those women listening?
I would say, but what if you can?
Yeah.
What if you can? Like,
Yeah.
reframe it for yourself. And if you try and you fail, what do you learn? And what can you do differently next time, so that next time you've got a different chance of being able to make it more successful? We learn more through failure than we do through things that work. So everything is about learning and growing and being the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. So, what if you can? Don't
Yes.
stop.
I love that. Well, we'll end on that note. I want everyone to think about the thing that they're nervous about and think about what if I can. Think about all the possibilities of what could happen if you just take that next step. Kate, thank you so much. This has been an incredible time together, and I am so excited that you joined us and so grateful. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm grateful to be asked. Thank you, Lindsay. This was awesome. Thank you
You're
for having
welcome.
me on.
Of course, anytime. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you.